Welcome to Terrormouth, where the night doesn't just hold secrets, it remembers them. Story 1. The mile marker that shouldn't exist, never planned to stop in Bryan County. No one ever does. It's one of those places you pass through at night without thinking, a thin stretch of highway cutting through endless trees. No lights, no radio signal, no reason to slow down. But that was before the mile marker appeared. It was just after midnight when I crossed the county line. My GPS blinked, froze, and then went black. The radio dissolved into static. I told myself it was normal old roads, poor coverage, but the silence felt heavy, like the night was pressing in on the car. That's when I saw it, mile marker 117. I slowed instinctively. Something about it felt wrong. I was sure I'd passed mile 117 at least 10 minutes earlier. I even remembered it clearly because the marker had been bent, leaning slightly toward the road like it was watching traffic go by. I checked my odometer. I hadn't gone in circles. I was driving straight. No turns. No exits. A few seconds later, the trees thinned, revealing a small pull-off on the right. A rusted sedan sat there with its hazard lights blinking weakly. A man stood beside it, waving one arm slowly, like he was tired or injured. Every instinct told me not to stop, but it was a deserted road, and the man looked old. Late 60s maybe. Thin, his movements were stiff, almost delayed, like his body was reacting a second too late to his thoughts. I pulled over, keeping the engine running. As soon as I stepped out, the air changed. It smelled metallic, like wet pennies. The man turned toward me, and my stomach dropped. His face was pale to palened. His eyes reflected my headlights with a dull, glassy shine. When he spoke, his voice came out flat and careful, each word placed with effort. "You shouldn't be here," I laughed nervously. "Car trouble?" He nodded once, too precise. Mine stopped. Right after the marker. "The marker?" I asked. "Mile 117. A chill crawled up my spine. "Yeah, I just passed that." His lips twitched. Not quite a smile. Everyone does. Before I could ask what he meant, my car door slammed shut behind me, hard. I spun around. No wind, no movement. Just my car, locked now, lights still on. When I turned back, the man was closer. I hadn't seen him move. "You need to leave," he said. "Before it notices you, notices me." I whispered. He glanced toward the trees. For the first time, his expression broke fear, raw and childlike. "The road doesn't like witnesses." From deep in the forest came a sound, slow, deliberate footsteps crunching leaves, far heavier than any animal. The trees bent slightly as something passed between them, unseen but massive. The man grabbed my wrist. His hand was ice. "Listen carefully," he said. "When you see the marker again, don't look at it. Don't slow down. And whatever you hear, don't stop." "What happens if I do?" I asked. He met my eyes. "You become part of the road." The footsteps grew louder. Suddenly, my car unlocked itself. The interior light flicked on. "Go," the man hissed. I didn't hesitate. I jumped in, slammed the door, and hit the gas. In the rearview mirror, I saw the man step backward directly into the trees. Something tall unfolded behind him, too tall. Its silhouette stretched unnaturally, limbs bending the wrong way as it wrapped around him. He didn't scream. He just vanished into the darkness. I drove faster than I ever have. 5 minutes later, my headlights caught a familiar sign. Mile marker, 117. Perfectly straight, clean, like it had never been touched. And this time, it was facing me. Asterisk, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. Mile marker 117 loomed in the headlights, unnaturally close despite how fast I had driven. I remembered the old man's warning, don't look at it. Don't slow down. Whatever you hear, don't stop. But instinct overrode reason. I couldn't help glancing at it. The moment I did, everything changed. The air grew heavy, thick, almost wet. The trees lining the road bent toward me, branches clawing at the sky. Shadows stretched across the asphalt like black rivers, slithering toward the car. Then I heard the sound of something massive moving in the woods, yet no leaves rustled, no wind blew. Just footsteps. Slow, deliberate, impossible. My vision blurred. The mile marker's number seemed to twist, stretching vertically as if mocking reality. And then, movement. A shape emerged from the shadow behind the marker. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent backward like broken twigs. Its head tilted unnaturally, gazing directly at me. Its eyes glowed faintly, red and hungry. Panic surged. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward. The headlights illuminated the road, but it wasn't the same road. The asphalt twisted, stretching into the darkness. The trees were gone, replaced by black shapes that pulsated and swayed as if alive. The sound of footsteps multiplied, now all around me, echoing from nowhere. A whisper came from the passenger side. My breath caught in my throat. It was the man, no, it wasn't. It was something wearing his face. The pale, glassy eyes stared at me, lips moving silently. Join us. Stay. Part of the road. I swerved, tires screeching. The car shuddered, the dashboard flickering. The radio static roared, forming words. You can't leave. You can't leave. Then the road ended. Not a cliff, not trees, but nothing. A void stretching infinitely. The mile marker hovered above the asphalt like a portal, its number warped and twisting. Shadows poured from it, reaching for the car, pressing against it, trying to force it back. I remembered the old man's words. Don't stop. I floored it, heart hammering, praying my car could escape whatever this was. The shadows clawed at the tires, the windshield, my arms. I felt cold fingers brushing my skin, trying to pull me into the blackness. And then, it happened. A flash of light. I was back on the normal highway, headlights illuminating familiar asphalt and trees. The car shook, dashboard flickering once, then steady. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mile marker 117 was gone. No trace, no pull-off, nothing. I didn't stop until I reached the next town, shaking, drenched in sweat. My GPS worked. The radio played normally. But when I looked down at my odometer, had no memory of the miles I had just driven. It was as if the road itself had erased time, erased distance. Weeks later, I tried to research the old man, the mile marker, anything. Nothing existed. Bryan County had no records of mile 117. The road had never existed on any map. Locals wouldn't talk about it. Those who did described vague legends of disappearing travelers, but no one could confirm them. And at night, when I drive alone on long stretches of highway, I sometimes swear I see it in the distance. A lone mile marker, Perfect and impossible, waiting for the next car to slow down, waiting for the next soul to become part of the road, because some highways aren't meant to be driven. Story 2: The Hitchhiker on Route 9 in Westwood, Kentucky, was the kind of road people whispered about but avoided at night. Endless stretches of asphalt cut through dense forests, occasional farms, and crumbling barns. No towns, no gas stations, no lights for miles. It had a reputation among locals, drivers who ventured after midnight sometimes never returned. Jake Carson had heard the rumors but dismissed them. He was a night shift worker, used to long drives home, and this particular night had been unusually quiet until he saw her. It was just past 2 a.m., and the headlights of his old sedan barely pierced the fog that had settled over the road like a living blanket. A figure stood on the shoulder, thumb out. Jake slowed instinctively, squinting. The girl's hoodie was pale under the faint glow of his lights, her long hair falling over her face. She didn't move like a normal human, too deliberate, too measured. Her presence felt wrong, like she was slightly out of sync with reality. Jake's instincts screamed at him to keep driving, but curiosity and some small sense of responsibility got the better of him. He pulled over. "Hey, you need a ride?" he called, trying to keep his voice casual. Her head lifted. The moment their eyes met, he froze. There was no white in them, just deep, black hollows that reflected the headlights like pools of oil. Her smile was slow, deliberate, and chilling it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please," she whispered. The air inside the car dropped several degrees instantly. Jake's breath fogged the windshield, his hands gripping the wheel tight. He turned the heater on full blast, but the temperature stayed cold, unnaturally so, like the inside of the car had been plunged into winter. "Where to?" he asked, trying to mask the tension in his voice. "Just down the road," she murmured, but her voice was layered, as if multiple tones overlapped. A single word carried the sound of many, echoing faintly in his mind, leaving him dizzy. The road ahead began to change in subtle ways. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the asphalt. Trees twisted their branches in impossible angles, blocking patches of the road from view. The fog thickened and swirled with a will of its own, forming tendrils that seemed to reach toward the car. Are you cold?" Jake asked, though he already felt the answer in his bones. She didn't flinch. Instead, a laugh escaped her lips. It was soft, melodic, and layered. Each note seemed to echo from a different direction at once, overlapping with itself, creating a sound that wasn't entirely human. "I warned you," she said suddenly, voice now urgent, the overlapping tones still present. "Route 9 isn't safe. Not for anyone after dark." Jake's pulse quickened. He tried to ignore the feeling in the pit of his stomach that he wasn't alone. The rearview mirror seemed to warp, showing flashes of movement in the backseat, faint outlines of small hands pressing against the glass. Pale faces staring, mouths open in silent screams. He whipped his head back, and nothing was there. Who's behind us?" he asked, but she didn't answer. "They're always behind us," she murmured, waiting for the wrong moment. The first shadow emerged seconds later. A man, limping grotesquely, dragging one leg as if it were broken. His skin was pale, wet-looking, almost translucent. He moved unnaturally fast for a disabled person, a jerk in motion that made Jake's stomach lurch. The girl didn't blink. Jake slammed on the accelerator. The car shuddered, but the speedometer barely moved past 30. The dashboard flickered, as if fighting against some unseen force. "They can't catch me," she said calmly, almost bored. "But if you stop, they'll take you first." The limping man kept pace with them. Impossible. Shadows bent around him, forming claw-like tendrils that occasionally grazed the car, leaving frost and black streaks. Jake's panic rose, a wave of nausea and fear. He tried to call for help, but the radio crackled, then went dead. His phone showed no service, as if the road itself had swallowed all technology. Minutes or was it hours? Passed, the road stretched endlessly, becoming twisted and serpentine. Trees bent unnaturally, branches scraping the roof and sides of the car. He realized that the road was alive, watching, waiting, feeding on the fear of those who drove it. Suddenly, the girl's eyes glowed faint red. Her mouth opened unnaturally wide, producing a chorus of layered screams that filled Jake's mind, overwhelming his senses. The car shuddered violently, tires screeching as though the asphalt itself resisted him. In the mirrors, the shadows multiplied. Figures emerged from the fog, hundreds of pale, distorted forms with blank eyes. They pressed against the car, moving impossibly fast, trying to bend reality around it. The limping man was everywhere at once, both in front and behind, in the mirrors, and in fleeting glimpses in the corner of his vision. Jake's fingers gripped the wheels so tightly they ached. He remembered the girl's words, "Don't stop, don't look behind," but he couldn't help it. One glance over his shoulder was all it took. The shadows surged. Hands, black, twisted, cold clawed at the roof, windows, and doors. Faces pressed against the glass, mouths opening in silent screams. The road itself seemed to rise and warp beneath him. For a terrifying moment, the sky above turned into a swirling void of red and black, and the mile markers along the highway bent toward him, as if leaning to watch. Then everything became a blur. Jake's vision blurred as the car shuddered violently. Shadows pressed against the windows, climbing over the roof, reaching inside. The air was thick and heavy, almost liquid, pressing down on his chest. His knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel. His foot mashed the accelerator, but the car seemed trapped in slow motion, fighting against some unseen force. The girl sat silently, her red glowing eyes fixed on the road ahead. Then she spoke, voice layered, echoing, almost melodic in the chaos. "The road feeds on fear. If you falter, it claims you." Suddenly, the asphalt ahead split like a wound, revealing black, undulating tendrils reaching toward the tires. Figures emerged from the fog-twisted shapes of previous travelers, their faces pale and distorted, mouths agape in eternal screams. Jake could see hands stretching impossibly long, pressing against the windshield, trying to pull him into the darkness. He slammed the brakes instinctively, but the car didn't stop. It skidded, tires screeching, headlights illuminating the infinite void ahead. The girl's voice echoed directly in his mind now, almost soothing. "Drive, Jake. Drive past it. Ignore them. Don't stop." A hand appeared in the rearview mirror, grotesque, elongated hand, blackened and thin. Another appeared on the side window. More followed, pressing in, bending around the car as if reality itself had melted. Jake's heart thundered, sweat stinging his eyes. In a desperate act, he floored the accelerator. The car lurched forward violently, tires gripping the asphalt just enough to move. The girl leaned forward slightly, whispering, "Almost there. The exit." The road twisted impossibly, spiraling like a snake. Every time he glanced at the mirrors, the shadows multiplied, figures twisting into shapes that defied logic. One face pressed against the glass human at first glance, but the mouth stretched wider than possible, screaming silently, eyes reflecting multiple shades of red. And then, a flash, the trees and fog vanished. He was back on the normal Route 9, headlights illuminating familiar asphalt and unbroken forest. The dashboard was normal. The mirrors reflected only his terrified face. The girl was gone. Jake slowed, still trembling, looking behind him. No shadows, no pale figures, nothing. The road was empty. The mile markers were all normal. Weeks later, he tried to research the stretch of Route 9 where it happened. Nothing. No missing persons, no reports. No local legends beyond vague whispers of midnight travelers. Even the exact location where the girl had appeared was gone. Satellite images, maps, all showing only miles of normal road. But Jake remembers. Every time he drives long stretches of empty roads at night, he feels it, the whisper of the hitchhiker's layered voice, the subtle pressure of the road bending, watching, feeding. Sometimes, in the rearview mirror, he swears he sees a faint figure, hood up, standing silently on the shoulder. And he knows the road never forgets. Those who stop or look back are gone forever, absorbed into Route 9's endless collection, because some highways are alive and some are never human. Story 3. The Fog on Hollow Creek Road. Hollow Creek Road had always been a place locals avoided after dark. Situated on the outskirts of a tiny Appalachian town, it was little more than a cracked asphalt path flanked by dense woods. Travelers rarely saw another car for miles, and fog often rolled in thick and heavy, even on dry nights. Emma Saunders, a graduate student driving home from a late library session, didn't believe in the ghost stories. She had a full tank of gas, a working GPS, and headphones blasting soft music. She didn't notice the fog at first. It crept up silently, swallowing the edges of the road until the trees disappeared entirely. Then she saw the first sign, a dim, flickering light hovering above the road, suspended in the fog. It wasn't a street lamp, not a reflection. It hovered about 10 feet above the ground, pulsating gently. She slowed, curiosity and unease warring in her chest as she approached. The fog thickened, seeping through the car vents despite closed windows. The temperature dropped, and her breath fogged the windshield. Then she heard it, faint scratching along the sides of the car, coming from the woods. Slow, deliberate, like claws dragging along bark and leaves. Emma's heart began to race. She tried to accelerate, but the car seemed to struggle, as if moving through something denser than air. The pulsing light hovered closer now, impossibly moving alongside her. She reached for the radio, but static filled the cabin, forming faint whispers. "Don't stop. Don't stop. Join us." Her GPS glitched. The map displayed the road she was on, but the next mile marker read 0.0 miles, then disappeared entirely. The trees pressed inward, bending slightly, branches scraping the roof. Shapes flickered in the fog, elongated shadows that weren't her reflection. Then she saw them, figures emerging from the mist. Children, dozens of them, but their eyes were too black, too empty, and their movements jerky, almost mechanical. They didn't speak, but they reached toward the car, tiny hands clawing at the fog as if trying to grip her. Emma panicked. She swerved, heart pounding, trying to escape the strange procession. The figures followed, never slowing, floating above the ground at times, their shadows stretching unnaturally. Her headlights flickered, revealing more shapes tall thin, faceless figures lurking just beyond the car. Moving silently through the fog. Suddenly, a figure appeared directly in front of the car. She slammed the brakes. The fog seemed to solidify, a grey wall pressing against the windshield. The car shook violently, and the engine sputtered. Then, a hand appeared on the hood panel, elongated, too thin to be human. It pressed down with impossible weight. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, coming from every direction at once. Join us. Stay. Forever. Her eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Shadows pressed faces against the glass, mouths stretching impossibly wide in silent screams. In a desperate act, Emma stomped the accelerator. The car lurched forward violently, tires screeching, and the fog swirled into a vortex around her. Shapes collided with the car, leaving scratches and frost. But somehow she moved ahead, the road warping and twisting under the headlights. Then she glimpsed it, a child standing on the road, head tilted unnaturally, limbs bent at impossible angles. Staring directly at her, its eyes glowed faintly red. It raised a hand, beckoning, and the whispers coalesced into one chilling command. Stop. Join us. Emma's scream caught in her throat as she swerved hard, tires skidding on the slick asphalt. The fog thickened around the car, hiding the edges of the road. She realized, with mounting terror, that this was no ordinary fog. It was alive. Aware, feeding off fear, her fear. The headlights flickered again. Shapes lurched closer, figures stretching, twisting, crawling through the mist. The vortex of fog grew denser, almost tangible, and she felt hands brushing against the roof, sides, even inside the car. The child, impossibly tall now, seemed to float alongside the vehicle, matching her speed with an unnatural grace. Emma's mind raced. She had to survive, had to escape this nightmare, but every instinct told her that if she stopped, she would never leave Hollow Creek Road alive. Emma's heart pounded as she fought to keep the car on the slick asphalt. The fog was no longer just mist, it had become a solid, writhing mass pressing against the windows, roof, and sides. The pale child she had seen moments ago now towered impossibly high, limbs bending like rubber, floating above the road. Its eyes glowed a deep red, and it opened its mouth unnaturally wide, producing a chorus of layered, high-pitched whispers that tore into Emma's mind. She stomped the accelerator, tires squealing, but the car responded sluggishly. The road beneath her seemed to stretch endlessly, spiraling, folding, as though the asphalt itself were alive. Shadows pressed from every side. Figures human and knotty merged from the dense fog, their movements jerky, inhuman, limbs bending at impossible angles. Pale faces pressed against the windshield, mouths frozen in silent screams. Emma's hands shook on the wheel. The headlights flickered and dimmed. The radio burst into a cacophony of overlapping voices. Stay. Join us. Don't leave. Her blood ran cold. It was as if the very air around her vibrated with the intent to consume her. The child floated alongside the car, impossibly close now, its small hand stretching unnaturally long to touch the hood. As it did, the world seemed to buckle. The asphalt twisted, the trees leaned inward like grotesque sentinels, and Emma felt herself slipping, her mind fraying at the edges. Then the fog opened slightly, revealing a narrow stretch of road bathed in pale moonlight. A voice, the girl's voice, layered and echoing, whispered directly into her mind. "Drive, don't stop. You can leave. If you survive." Emma's adrenaline surged. She forced the car forward, weaving through the warped highway. The shadows lunged, reaching, clawing, but they couldn't grasp her. The towering child screamed a sound that was both a warning and a plead. The fog shrieked in response, like a living entity in pain. Minutes or hours, pastime, had no meaning in the fog. Shapes continued to press against the car, but Emma's focus was fixed on the faint stretch of moonlit road ahead. The child's red eyes flared one last time before it dissolved into the mist, its scream echoing as a final warning. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the fog began to dissipate. The road straightened, the asphalt returned to normal, and the twisted trees returned to their natural shapes. Emma's hands were trembling violently, sweat and tears mixing on her face as she pulled into a small roadside turnout. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The air was warm again, quiet, peaceful almost. She glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing, no shadows, no pale faces, no towering child. Only the empty road stretching into the dark woods. Emma tried to convince herself it was over, that it had all been a hallucination, stress, exhaustion, but she couldn't erase the scratches on the car doors, the frost-like residue on the roof, or the way the fog had felt alive, aware. And she couldn't shake the whispers in her head, fading but persistent. "You almost stayed. You almost joined us." Weeks later, Emma researched Hollow Creek Road. There were reports of missing travelers over decades, always after nightfall. Locals avoided it entirely after dark. Some claimed the fog was cursed, a portal, a trap for wandering souls. Others said it was the road itself, feeding on fear and collecting those who dared drive it at night. Emma never drove Hollow Creek Road again. But sometimes, when driving long stretches of empty roads at night, she could feel it pull, the subtle bending of reality, the whispers just beyond hearing, and sometimes, just at the edge of her headlights, she would glimpse a small figure standing in the fog, beckoning silently. Hollow Creek Road never forgets. Those who linger, who stop, who look back, are never seen again, and the fog is always hungry. Story for the roadside motel that wasn't there. Connor Hayes had been driving all night across the back roads of West Virginia. He was a long-haul delivery driver, used to isolated stretches of highway, but tonight the fog rolled in thicker than usual, and the moon barely cut through the darkness. His GPS had been glitching for miles, rerouting him into areas that didn't make sense. Exhaustion gnawed at him, eyelids heavy, and the next thing he knew, a neon sign flickered into view. "Welcome to Hollow Pines Motel. Vacancies available." Connor had never heard of Hollow Pines Motel, nor had he seen any town nearby. But the sign looked inviting. He needed rest, a warm bed, a bathroom. Without thinking, he swerved into the gravel lot, tires crunching against loose stones. The fog rolled around the building like living smoke, curling in unnatural patterns. The motel looked vintage 1950s style architecture with faded paint, flickering lights, and a faint smell of mildew drifting in the night air. As he approached, the neon sign flickered, casting red and green light that made the fog twist in strange shapes. The parking lot was empty, not a single car, not a single person. He stepped out of the truck, the cold night air biting, and made his way to the entrance. The door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit lobby furnished in outdated style, with a thick layer of dust covering the reception desk. A rotary phone sat off the side, its cord tangled. No one was there, but the faint sound of a music box melody played somewhere above, echoing through the empty halls. Connor called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice sounded unnaturally loud in the silence. From the shadowed hallway, a figure emerged, a woman in a faded maid uniform, her face obscured by shadow, but a faint smile visible. Her eyes glinted unnaturally in the dim light. "Welcome," she said, voice soft but layered, almost harmonizing with something else, some other faint whisper. "Room 6 is ready for you." Connor hesitated. I just need a bed. Is there anyone else here?" She shook her head. "No one else. You're all alone." Her smile widened unnaturally, just enough to make Connor's stomach twist. He followed her down the hallway, passing rooms on either side. Each door bore the same number 6 stacked like mirrors, repeating infinitely. When he reached the room she gestured toward, he noticed the walls themselves seemed slightly warped, bending inward like the space around him was alive. Inside the room, the bed was made, pillows fluffed, a warm light emanating from a lamp that shouldn't have been plugged in. Connor exhaled in relief, feeling the exhaustion finally sink into his body. But then, the window caught his attention. Outside, the fog had thickened, and he could see shadows moving just beyond the glass figures crouched low, shifting unnaturally. Watching Connor shook his head. "It's just the fog. Just tired," he muttered. He turned to the bed and froze. On the pillows, written in a thin, dark substance, were words, "You should never have stopped. We've been waiting." A cold wind swept through the room, despite all windows being closed. The door slammed shut behind him, and the faint music box melody grew louder, twisting into a warped, distorted lullaby that echoed off the walls. The shadows outside the window coalesced into humanoid forms, some crawling along the walls, others floating slightly above the ground, their faces pale and featureless. Connor's mind raced. He backed away from the bed, his eyes darting to the door locked. The maid's laughter echoed down the hall, slow, deliberate, impossibly layered, as if multiple voices were speaking in unison. He tried to call for help on his phone, but it displayed only static, no signal. Then the bedsheets shifted. A figure emerged, tall, pale, humanoid, with limbs bending at impossible angles. It looked at him, tilting its head unnaturally, whispering, "Welcome to Hollow Pines. Stay forever." Connor's adrenaline surged. He ran toward the door, pounding it, trying to break it open. The music box melody intensified, now accompanied by distant footsteps in the hall behind him. Approaching slowly but with impossible weight, he grabbed a nearby chair, ready to defend himself, but the shadow figure moved faster than possible, slipping past him, walls bending around it as it advanced. The maid appeared at the hallway entrance again, tilting her head, smiling that impossible smile, and the room seemed to stretch infinitely behind her. Doors multiplying in impossible geometry, Connor realized, in a terror that froze him to his core. This place wasn't meant for living people. The motel itself was alive, and it was hungry. Connor's panic reached a fever pitch as he backed against the warped walls. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors multiplying and twisting like a nightmarish Escher painting. The music box melody warped into a hyped shed, discordant scream that echoed from every direction, vibrating in his skull. The maid appeared closer, impossibly fast, floating slightly above the warped floor. Her shadow stretched unnaturally long, merging with the other shadows crawling along the walls. Room 6 is yours forever, she whispered, voice layered with dozens of others, overlapping in terrifying harmony. Connor grabbed the door handle and yanked, but the door had vanished. In its place, the wall pulsated, writhing like living flesh. He spun around, only to see dozens of humanoid forms emerging from every corner, faceless and pale, limbs bent in impossible angles, bodies crawling along the walls and ceiling. Their whispers merged into a single chant, "Stay. Forever. Join us." Desperate, Connor grabbed a lamp from the nightstand and swung it at the nearest figure. It passed through like mist, and the figure reformed, closer than before. He realized with a sinking horror that nothing in this place obeyed the normal rules of reality. Gravity, space, time, they all bent to the motel's will. He tried screaming, but no sound came from his throat. His phone fell to the floor, screen flickering static, and then went black. The room's light dimmed, leaving him in almost total darkness. Only the glow from the warped neon sign outside, seeping through the windows in twisted shapes. The shadows coalesced into a single, massive figure in the center of the room. It had the vague form of a man, but its limbs stretched beyond human limits, head twisting unnaturally, with dozens of featureless faces crawling across its body. The maid's voice layered over it. "You should have never stopped. Now, you're ours." Connor's mind raced. He remembered the truck outside. Maybe, just maybe, he could escape if he returned to his vehicle. He sprinted toward the window, yanking it open. The fog outside had thickened into a wall, swirling violently. Shapes emerged from the mist, crawling toward him, some sliding along the ground at impossible speed, summoning every ounce of strength. Connor leaped through the window, smashing into the gravel parking lot. Pain shot through his arms and legs, but he scrambled toward the truck. The fog seemed to recoil, moving aside just enough to reveal the vehicle. He threw himself behind the wheel, hands shaking, eyes wide, and slammed the key into the ignition. The truck roared to life, headlights slicing through the fog. Connor gunned the engine, tires skidding over loose gravel, and he bolted forward. Shadows reached out, fingers stretching impossibly long, brushing the truck, leaving icy scratches along the metal. But the truck moved faster, breaking through the edges of the living fog. Minutes or hours passed. The motel was nowhere to be seen. The fog thinned into normal mist. The road returned to familiar black asphalt, and trees lined the roadside normally. Connor's pulse still thundered in his ears as he slowed, checking the rearview mirror. No shadows, no maid, no warped hallway. Only the empty highway stretching endlessly. Weeks later, Connor tried to find Hollow Pines Motel again. Maps, GPS, local records, nothing. People in the nearest town had never heard of it. No reports, no addresses. Nothing beyond vague whispers about haunted highways and travelers who disappeared. But Connor remembered. Every time he drove empty roads at night, he could feel at the subtle bend of reality, the faint tug of something watching, waiting. And sometimes, just at the corner of his vision, he would see a pale figure in a maid uniform, standing silently by the roadside. Beckoning. Connor learned a truth too late. Some motels aren't built for humans. They are built to trap, to feed, and to collect. The Hollow Pines Motel exists outside reality, only appearing to those who wander too late, too tired, and too alone. and those who stop are never seen again. Story 5. The Vanishing Truck Stop. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Lisa Harper drove down Route 47, a narrow back road cutting through the forests of northern Maine. She had been on the road for hours, trying to make it to her sister's house before sunrise. Her stomach growled, and the cold cup of coffee she had sipped an hour ago had long gone flat. Out of nowhere, she spotted a glowing sign in the distance. Lakeside Truck Stop, open 24 hours. Relief washed over her. She swerved into the gravel lot, tires crunching, and slowed to a stop. The fog hung low, curling around the edges of the building like liquid smoke. The truck stop looked old, almost untouched by time. Neon lights flickered above the entrance, buzzing softly. The doors were slightly ajar, inviting, but when she stepped inside, the silence hit her first. No hum of refrigerators, no chatter of tired truckers, just a cold, echoing emptiness. She walked past rows of dusty shelves and vending machines, peering into the dimly lit aisles. Everything looked frozen in time. Old snacks, cracked mugs, a single clock stuck at 1:58 a.m. A bell jingled faintly as she reached the counter, but no one appeared. Then she saw him, a man sitting in a corner booth, hunched over, wearing a trucker cap pulled low. But something was wrong. His shadow stretched impossibly long, merging with the walls and floor. Lisa stepped closer. "Hello," she called softly. The man didn't respond. When she reached out, the air around him shimmered like heat haze. And then he vanished. A sudden chill ran through the building. The lights flickered, plunging her into darkness for a heartbeat before buzzing back on. The fog outside seemed to creep under the doors, curling round her ankles, moving like it had its own mind. Lisa backed toward the exit, but the door wouldn't open. She tried the windows. Frost had formed over them, obscuring the parking lot. The neon sign outside flickered violently, casting long, twisting shadows through the fog. A faint whisper echoed through the store. "You shouldn't have come here." She spun around, heart hammering, and saw dozens of shadowy figures standing along the aisles. Faces obscured, eyes hollow, fingers stretching toward her like roots. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but the building seemed to stretch. Corridors appeared where none existed, walls bending in ways that defied logic. The fog thickened inside, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Then she heard the trucks. Engines idling, diesel fumes thickening, but no trucks were outside. The sounds moved closer, echoing from every direction. And through the fog, she saw them, drivers, hunched over steering wheels, faces pale and featureless, staring directly at her, unmoving, whispering in voices layered together. "Stay. Forever. Join the convoy." Lisa's pulse spiked. She realized she had stumbled into something that wasn't just abandoned, was alive, hungry, and impossible to escape. The truck stop wasn't a place to rest. It was a trap, a roadside purgatory for anyone who dared pull in after midnight. Lisa's breath came in ragged, gasps as she stumbled through the twisting aisles of the truck stop. The fog inside had thickened into a near-solid wall, curling around her like fingers, making it impossible to see more than a few feet. Every step echoed unnaturally, like the building itself was mocking her panic. The shadowy figures moved silently, gliding closer with every heartbeat. Their faces were pale voids, featureless, yet she felt them staring directly at her. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a chorus that rattled her mind. "Stay. Join us. never leave. She slammed against a door that had not existed moments ago. It gave way to a narrow hallway lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The walls seemed alive, pulsing, stretching, contracting as though the building was breathing. Every step she took, the fog seemed to reach higher, climbing toward her like grasping arms. At the end of the hallway, she saw a sliver of normalcy, the exit. Her heart leaped. But as she ran, the floor beneath her became soft, almost liquid, and she felt herself sinking. Figures emerged from the fog, sliding along the warped floor, reaching for her ankles, tugging at her clothes. Their whispers layered into a deafening chant, forever, forever. Desperation surged. Lisa dove through the exit. The doors slammed behind her with the force of a hurricane. Outside, the fog had receded slightly, revealing the gravel lot. But something was off. The lot stretched endlessly. No road leading away, no moon, no stars. Just the neon glow of the truck stop, flickering like a heartbeat in the dark. She ran toward her car, tires crunching against the gravel, headlights illuminating the lot that seemed to ripple under the glow. Her engine roared to life, and she slammed the truck into reverse, only to find the lot stretching, shifting. Every time she looked in the rearview mirror, the truck stop was closer than it should have been. The neon sign bending and pulsing unnaturally. She tried to drive forward. The lot itself seemed alive, shadows pressing against the tires, clawing at the metal, dragging at the vehicle. The voices came again, louder, layered, almost inside her head. Join the convoy. Stay forever. Then she saw them, dozens of trucks materializing from the fog. Their headlights glowed red, engines idling with a supernatural hiss. The drivers were all pale, faceless, sliding along the cabs as if unbound by physics. They formed a wall across the gravel, leaving her nowhere to go. Lisa slammed on the brakes, gripping the wheel until her knuckles bled. The nearest shadowy driver extended a hand, fingers impossibly long, scraping the hood of her truck. A whisper, "You can't leave. You never really arrived." Her vision blurred, reality bending. The lot stretched, the sky twisted into unnatural colors, and the fog began to swallow her truck. In a final, desperate act, she turned the wheel sharply, aiming for a gap in the mist, and pressed the accelerator to the floor. For a moment, it worked. The mist thinned. She glimpsed the edge of the forest, the real highway beyond. Relief surged. But just as quickly, the neon sign flashed one last time, illuminating a figure standing in the middle of the road. The truck stop attendant, impossibly tall, faceless, hands raised in silent warning. The lot vanished around her, replaced by the normal highway, wet with rain, empty. Quiet, she drove without stopping until sunrise, never looking back. When she tried to report the truck stop later, maps and locals confirmed there was no lakeside truck stop anywhere near Route 47. None of the roads she'd driven connected to it. Lisa never drove that road again. But sometimes, during long, lonely nights, she swore she could see a faint neon glow flickering in the distance. And in her nightmares, she hears the whisper, "Join the convoy. Stay forever." The highway was quiet, but the vanishing truck stop still waits for anyone reckless or tired enough to pull over after midnight. Story 6, The Phantom Road Sign. Aaron Hayes had driven this route dozens of times before County Road 13. A desolate, winding stretch of asphalt cutting through the northern Vermont forests. But tonight, after hours behind the wheel delivering late-night medical supplies, the road seemed different. A dense, unnatural fog rolled across the pavement, curling around the headlights, swallowing everything beyond a few yards. The first sign appeared suddenly, glowing faintly through the mist. "Welcome to Ashwood. Next exit to Miles." Aaron froze. Ashwood was a town he had never heard of. Every map, every GPS coordinate marked nothing but miles of forest. He blinked, the letters flickering like old neon, warping, bending slightly in ways that made his stomach turn. He slowed instinctively, gripping the wheel tighter. That's when he noticed movement in the rearview mirror vehicle tailing him, massive and dark, yet impossible to make out. No headlights, no reflection. As his heart pounded, he turned his eyes back to the road. The vehicle was gone. Only the fog remained, thick and suffocating. A few miles later, he spotted a figure on the shoulder, a man in a tattered high-visibility vest, holding a lantern that glowed unnaturally bright against the fog. He stepped toward the road, perfectly still, every step echoing faintly, though the night was silent. "Can you help me?" The man called, voice hollow, layered as if multiple whispers were speaking at once. "My truck broke down, right here." Aaron's instincts screamed danger, yet some compulsion, primal and inexplicable, made him stop. He rolled down the window. The man approached slowly, unnaturally upright, limbs stiff, movements jerky. Behind him, there was no truck, just a black void where the road should have continued. "I don't have a tow," Aaron stammered, backing up slightly. The man tilted his head, and suddenly the trees lining the road began to shimmer. Faint, glowing symbols appeared etched along the bark, angular sigils that pulsed and twisted like living runes. Aaron's stomach dropped. The man's face now contorted, mouth open in a silent scream. His eyes had gone completely black, reflecting the fog like pools of ink. Aaron hit the gas instinctively. The figure vanished, but the road itself warped beneath him. The asphalt twisted like liquid, curving impossibly. The fog thickened, forming shapes at the edge of his vision tool. Thin figures bending and twisting as though crawling along the trees and road. Then the signs began to multiply. Every mile marker was replaced with glowing, pulsating warnings. "Wrong way, do not proceed, turn back." Their red glow reflected in the fog, casting jagged shadows across the forest. They seemed to move subtly, shifting as he drove, bending reality itself. Aaron's pulse hammered in his ears. His GPS flickered and died. The dashboard lights dimmed, then illuminated with static, flashing images of himself over and over driving this very stretch of road, trapped in a nightmare loop. He realized with horror that the phantom road signs and the figure were not just haunting him, they were leading him somewhere, orchestrating every move, forcing him deeper into some supernatural trap. The figure reappeared in the middle of the road. Lantern raised, arms extended, glowing symbols now hovering in the air, spinning slowly like the blades of a cyclone. Aaron slammed the brakes, skidding sideways, tires screaming against the wet asphalt. The fog surged, swirling into tendrils that clawed at the car. The whispering returned, dozens of voices layered together. "Stay. Follow. Never leave." The rearview mirror showed a horrifying sight. Multiple copies of himself inside the car, all staring wide-eyed, frozen in terror, trapped in the endless repetition of this road. He glanced again, and the copies were gone, but the sense of being observed remained desperate. He tried to turn off the road, but the forest had shifted. Trees bent inward unnaturally, fog closing gaps where turns should have been. The ground beneath the tires became soft, almost liquid, and the car sank slightly with every movement. Figures began emerging from the fog, featureless, pale humanoid shapes, fingers elongated, stretching toward him. Their whispers overlapped into a deafening chant. "Join us. Stay forever." Aaron's mind raced. He tried to focus on the distant neon glow of the Ashwood sign ahead, as if it was salvation. But the sign flickered violently, stretching, bending, the letters contorting into grotesque shapes. Behind it, the spectral man stood impossibly tall now, limbs unnaturally elongated, face void of features. Symbols hovered around him, glowing brighter, pulsing with life. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, yet every option seemed impossible. The car engine roared, the tires screamed, yet forward motion felt like wading through thick molasses. The whispering crescendoed almost inside his skull. "You belong to the road now. You cannot leave." As the fog thickened into a near-solid wall, Aaron realized the horrifying truth. He had not stumbled onto a strange road by accident. The signs, the figure, the fog, they were a mechanism, a living trap, designed to feed on travelers at the witching hour. And once ensnared, the highway would never let them go. Aaron's hands shook violently on the steering wheel as the fog thickened into near-solid walls. The twisted road ahead seemed endless, curving unnaturally, bending in ways no normal asphalt ever could. The whispering voices layered inside his skull, a chorus of commands. "Stay. Join us. Never leave." He tried to focus, searching for the neon glow of the Ashwood sign, the only anchor in this nightmare. But the light flickered violently, bending like liquid. Behind the sign, the spectral figure had grown impossibly tall, limbs contorted and twisting like shadows. Symbols hovered around him, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. Desperation surged. Aaron slammed the accelerator, tires screeching, the car lurching forward. But the road itself resisted, rising and falling under him like a living thing. The fog surged, tendrils curling round the car, pressing against windows, doors, and tires, tugging, pulling. Figures emerged, dozens of pale, faceless humanoids sliding along the asphalt and through the fog. Their fingers scraped the car, leaving ghostly burns across the metal. Aaron tried to turn any direction, but the forest had walked into a cage of twisted trees, their branches curving inward, scraping the roof. The signs multiplied, flashing incomprehensible messages in red neon. "You cannot leave. Stay forever." The engine roared in protest. Sweat poured down his face. Every instinct screamed to escape, but the car felt like it was moving through molasses, slow, trapped. In the rearview mirror, he glimpsed countless copies of himself inside the car, silent, trapped in loops of fear and confusion. Then the figure stepped forward, appearing inside the car as if he had lantern raised, hollow black eyes staring into Aaron's, whispering layered commands. "You're part of the road now. You belong to us." Aaron tried to scream, but no sound came. The windshield fogged over, and when he wiped it away, the road outside had vanished entirely. Instead of asphalt, there was only endless black mist, glowing red with the pulsating light of the signs. The vehicle seemed weightless, suspended in a void where physics no longer applied. Panic clawed at his mind. In a last, desperate act, he grabbed the lantern from the figure's hand, cold, impossibly heavy, radiating a dark energy, and flung it into the fog. The mist erupted into a violent whirlwind, spinning the signs and figures around him. The car lurched forward, finally breaking free of the warped asphalt, or so it seemed. Aaron gasped as the fog thinned. Moonlight reflected off wet asphalt, and he realized he was back on the familiar stretch of County Road 13. The forest was normal again. The trees, ordinary, no glowing signs, no spectral figures. The radio crackled, a distant owl hooted, and he could hear the hum of his tires on asphalt once more. Relief washed over him, but only for a moment. The rearview mirror reflected the road behind, and he saw it. A faint neon glow flickering far down the road, distant but unmistakable. And in the distance, the spectral figure stood again, lantern raised, waiting. Its eyes burned hollow black, fixed on him. Aaron accelerated, driving without stopping until sunrise, never daring to glance back. But the memory haunted him, the whispering chorus, the endless fog, the faceless figures, the road that warped reality itself. Weeks later, when he told locals about Ashwood, none had ever heard of the town. Maps showed only forest, and GPS data recorded nothing unusual. Yet sometimes, on long, lonely drives late at night, Aaron swore he saw the faint red glow of signs in the fog, just at the edge of perception. And the whispering never fully left him. Stay. Join us. Never leave. Some roads are not meant to be traveled after dark. Some signs are not meant to be read. In County Road 13, it waits, patient and hungry, for the next driver, foolish or tired enough to follow the phantom signs. Story 7. The Midnight Rest Stop. Ethan Miller had been driving for nearly 10 hours, hauling sound equipment for a music festival in rural Kentucky. The GPS had routed him along Highway 47, a twisting, desolate road that seemed to vanish into thick woods on either side. Streetlights were rare, and the occasional deer silhouette flickered at the edge of his headlights. Exhaustion clawed at him. Every mile passed like a blur. Finally, relief appeared. A dimly lit, flickering sign reading Pine Hollow Rest Stop, open 24 hours. Ethan exhaled and pulled over, eager for a break. The rest stop sat in a hollowed clearing, asphalt cracked and overgrown at the edges. The lights above the canopy flickered, struggling to stay on. No cars, no people. Just the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of unseen creatures in the forest. Ethan stepped out and immediately noticed the temperature drop sharply, an unnatural chill rolling off the pavement. He approached the vending machines, their hum low and erratic, as he poured himself a weak cup of coffee from a machine. He noticed movement beyond the parking lot, fleeting shapes that vanished when he turned. A shadow seemed to flicker between the trees, far too human, but with no discernible features inside. The rest stop looked abandoned, yet meticulously clean. The floor was spotless, counters neatly stacked, chairs aligned in rigid rows, too perfect for a place that should have been empty. The coffee he sipped was metallic, bitter, and clotted strangely. He coughed, feeling the taste stick to his throat. Then he saw it, the mirrors lining the walls. His reflection blinked out of sync with him. The chairs behind him in the reflection were slightly bent, elongated unnaturally, and in one pane, a shadowy figure stood silently head tilted, faceless, watching him. He turned quickly. Nothing, only the dull flicker of the fluorescent lights. A sudden rattling from a vending machine made him jump. A gust of icy wind swept through, even though the windows were all closed. On the floor, he noticed a glistening black liquid, almost tar-like, forming a trail that led toward a narrow corridor marked employees only. His heart thumped against his chest, every instinct screaming to leave. Yet some compulsion, a dark curiosity, drew him forward. Inside the corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzed erratically, casting shadows that twisted and writhed. The walls were scratched with arcane symbols, glowing faintly in red and green. They pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, and the air thickened, heavy with an oppressive energy that made breathing difficult. The whispers began, then soft at first, layered, multiple voices overlapping. Rest. Stay. Join us. Ethan's pulse quickened. At the end of the corridor, a door hung ajar. Beyond it, a small room appeared, lit by a dim, flickering lantern. Chairs circled a solitary figure, hunched and shaking, hair matted over its face. The moment it lifted its head, Ethan froze. Eyes entirely black, voids reflecting the dim light, staring at him with impossible focus. Its lips didn't move, yet a chilling, layered voice echoed in his mind. You shouldn't have come. Behind the figure, mirrors covered the wall. Ethan noticed with growing dread that each reflection was subtly wrong. His own reflection aged rapidly, skin sagging, eyes hollow, lips frozen in silent screams. He turned, trying to run, but the floorboards creaked unnaturally, as if alive. Chairs scraped across the floor on their own, blocking his path. The figure rose impossibly tall, movements fluid but unnerving, limbs bending slightly where they shouldn't. It glided toward him without touching the ground. Shadows lengthened, stretching from the mirrors to reach him. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, now deafening. You belong. You cannot leave. Stay forever. Ethan spun around, realizing the exit he had entered through no longer existed. The corridors stretched endlessly, vanishing into fog and darkness. Every mirror now reflected dozens of copies of himself, trapped in eternal terror. Faces contorted, hands reaching, mouths opening in silent screams. He stumbled backward, almost falling, and noticed the black liquid forming tendrils across the floor, moving toward him, curling round his shoes done in desperation. He tried to sprint, but the corridor seemed alive, elongating and twisting. The air became dense, filled with whispers, and the faint glow from the symbols on the walls intensified, casting ghostly red and green light across the room. The figure moved faster now, circling him effortlessly, shadows stretching to cover every inch of the floor. Then a sudden silence fell. The lantern's light flickered violently, and for a moment, everything froze. Ethan caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror's dozens of ghostly figures trapped behind the glass, pressing against the surface, silent yet watching, waiting. A single word resonated through his skull. Forever. Ethan screamed, stumbling back into a chair that moved by itself. The shadows surged, engulfing him, and the black liquid crawled higher, almost reaching his knees. The figure stepped close, face inches from his, void eyes staring into his soul. The whispers layered into a singular, echoing command. Join us. Then the room dissolved into fog. The lights flickered out. Ethan realized with dawning horror that the rest stop was not a building. It was a trap, a pocket of reality designed to feed on travelers at midnight. A place that existed somewhere between the living world and the shadows beyond. Ethan's chest heaved as the fog thickened around him, crawling into the corners of the room, seeping into every crack and shadow. The mirrors no longer reflected the corridor, they reflected infinity. A looping void filled with his own distorted faces, screaming silently. He stumbled forward, desperate for any exit. But the walls seemed to pulse, breathing in rhythm with the whispers. The figure moved closer, gliding effortlessly over the black liquid tendrils. Its void eyes locked on Ethan. Every step it took made the shadows on the walls stretch and twist, wrapping around the room like living ropes. Ethan tripped over a chair and fell, his hands scraping against the cold, wet floor. He tried to shout, but his voice cracked and warped, echoing back to him layered with dozens of ghostly voices. Suddenly, a series of red and green lights exploded along the walls, the symbols carved in the corridor now burning bright, glowing fiercely. The whispers sharpened, slicing through his mind. Forever. Join us. Never leave. In a desperate attempt to escape, Ethan grabbed a metal chair and hurled it toward the figure. It passed through him effortlessly, the shadowy form unmoved. Panic gave way to terror as he realized he was alone and yet not alone. The black liquid rose around him, climbing his legs like a living entity. The mirrors rippled, and dozens of faceless versions of himself reached out, silent hands pressing through the glass as if trying to pull him in. He scrambled toward the exit. He remembered the door that had once led to the parking lot, but the corridor stretched endlessly. Every turn brought him back to the same room. The figure appeared behind him in every mirror reflection, always inches away, smiling with those hollow, unblinking eyes. Ethan's mind raced, trying to make sense of reality. The rest stop was not a rest stop, was a trap, a prison feeding on fear. Every traveler who had stopped here had been consumed, leaving behind whispers in the walls, shadows in the fog. And now he was next. With no other options, Ethan remembered the lantern. It had been the only object in the room that seemed real, tangible. Summoning every ounce of courage, he lunged for it. The instant his fingers closed around the cold metal, the whispers intensified into a deafening roar. The figure recoiled slightly, its black eyes flaring red for the first time. The lantern pulsed with energy, radiating light that carved through the fog and shadows. The mirrors cracked violently, splitting the endless reflections into shards. The black liquid hissed, retreating as if burned by the light. The figure let out a hollow wail, and for a moment, Ethan felt a surge of hope. He ran, following the light from the lantern, sprinting through the endlessly twisting corridor. The whispers tried to claw back into his mind, promising eternity, but he forced his legs to keep moving. The floor beneath him vibrated, the walls twisting, but the lantern held steady, guiding him forward. Finally, he burst through a doorway into the parking lot. The fog had lifted slightly, and the first pale light of dawn broke across the cracked asphalt. The vending machines were silent. The coffee pot was cold. The forest beyond the rest stop looked ordinary again, innocent and still. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, the lantern dimming in his hand. He looked around, no figure, no shadows stretching across the asphalt. Only the faintest residue of the black liquid on the cracks of the parking lot. The whispers were gone. For a moment, he thought it was over, but then he noticed the sign. Pine Hollow Rest Stop, open 24 hours, flickering faintly. A neon red glow beneath the letters that pulsed like a heartbeat. And in the reflection of the asphalt puddle below it, he saw dozens of faceless figures watching him, their heads tilting in unison. They didn't move, but he felt their gaze. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He had escaped for now. But the rest stop would always be waiting, patient and hungry. For the next traveler who dared to stop after midnight, Ethan started his truck and drove away, never daring to look back. Yet every time he closed his eyes, even months later, he could see the black liquid creeping toward him, feel the chill of the fog, and hear the whispers, "Forever. Join us. Never leave." Story 8. The radio static on Willow Creek Road. It was just past midnight when Jenna Carlisle started down Willow Creek Road, a narrow, twisting back road in rural Tennessee she had driven dozens of times before. The sky was a washed-out gray from an unseen moon, and a low fog had begun rolling along the asphalt, curling around her tires like cold fingers. Her car was otherwise silent, the only sound a soft hum from the old radio mounted in the dashboard. For most of the drive, the static between stations was nothing unusual. Crackle, hiss, the occasional snippet of music or advertisement, but then came a voice. At first it was faint, almost drowned in the static, but distinct enough to make her blood run cold. Turn back. Her fingers froze on the steering wheel. The voice was distorted, layered, as if dozens of people were speaking at once, but the words were crystal clear, a command, a warning. She glanced at the rearview mirror. The road stretched straight ahead, lined with gnarled trees whose skeletal branches scratched against one another in the fog. The headlights revealed nothing unusual. At first, Jenna laughed nervously, a weak sound in the tense air. "Probably just some prank radio station," she muttered. She reached for the dial to switch channels, but the static intensified instead, forming what sounded like a whisper of her full name, Jenna, Jenna, Jenna. Her pulse spiked. Goosebumps prickled along her arms as the voice became urgent, insistent. "Stop. You can't go further." Up ahead, through the thick fog, a shape materialized, a rusted pickup truck, sitting dead in the middle of the road. Its headlights were off, engine cold, as if it had been abandoned for decades. The door swung open slowly, creaking on rusted hinges in a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the silent night. Every instinct screamed for her to drive past, but some deeper, darker part of her curiosity, or perhaps terror itself, froze her in place. She slowed, heart hammering, and her headlights swept over the truck's bed. Empty, nothing, but the fog thickened around it, curling unnaturally, as if it had a life of its own. The radio suddenly erupted with static, piercing, almost deafening, and then a new voice emerged from the white noise. It was low, a whispering chorus layered together, hundreds of voices speaking simultaneously, but forming one sentence that slithered directly into her mind. "You shouldn't be here. Never leave." Her hands shook on the wheel. She tried to turn the radio off, smash it even, but the buttons wouldn't respond. Panic surged, a wave she could neither fight nor suppress. She pressed the accelerator, tires squealing, but the car barely moved. Every time she glanced up, the road seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. Trees bending unnaturally, their shadows stretching like fingers, reaching for her. Then she noticed movement in the fog. Figures, dozens, maybe hundreds, emerged silently from the mist. Standing along the roadside, their forms unnaturally thin, their limbs twisted. They didn't run, didn't speak. They only stared, faceless, empty eyes reflecting the dim dashboard light. One of them lifted a hand, pointing directly at her. Her stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the car wouldn't respond. Jenna's vision blurred. Every reflective surface inside the car, the rearview mirror, the windows, the chrome trim now reflected multiple versions of herself. Each one screamed silently, their mouths moving without sound, hands clawing at the glass. Her own face in the mirror looked elongated, pale. Eyes blackened as though soaked in ink. The pickup truck ahead was gone. The fog thickened until the road itself vanished beneath her headlights. She was surrounded, trapped in a void of white mist. With the figures moving closer, their presence pressing in from all sides, impossible to avoid. She thought of running, jumping out of the car, screaming, but the moment she opened the door, the temperature dropped sharply. Frost crept along the dashboard and her sleeves, and a suffocating pressure pressed down on her chest. The radio's voice returned, now layered with hundreds of whispers. "The road owns you. Stay." In the corner of her eye, she saw the outline of a figure sitting silently in the back seat, one she had not noticed before. Its face was entirely blank, no eyes, no mouth, yet she felt its gaze burn into her skull. Its long, thin fingers tapped lightly on the top of her seat, counting down, patient, deliberate. Every shadow in the fog seemed to pulse, alive, moving in impossible ways. The asphalt beneath her tires rippled like water. The trees bent unnaturally, their branches reaching inward as though the forest itself wanted to consume her. The radio shrieked, static erupting violently, voices screaming inside her head. Jenna screamed. She turned the wheel with all her strength, trying to escape, but the car moved as though guided by some malevolent force. The fog tunnel ahead seemed endless, stretching into infinity, lined with faceless figures who emerged and vanished like ghosts. Her headlights finally caught a glimpse of something, a faint glow far ahead, like the faintest hint of a town. But as she drove toward it, the road shifted again. It wasn't a town, it was a clearing, and in the center stood dozens of figures, hitchhikers, travelers, all pale and faceless, standing silently in a circle. And in their midst, a dark shape, taller than any human, seemed to pulse with the radio's shrill static, exhaling whispers into the night. "Join us. Never leave. Forever." Jenna gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. Her heart thundered. Somewhere in the distance, the fog thickened further, crawling over the car, pressing in from all sides. The voices intensified, layering, overlapping, deafening. She realized, with absolute terror, that Willow Creek Road wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it had been waiting for her. The fog pressed closer, thick and cold, swirling around Jenna's car like living smoke. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles ached, pulse hammering in her temples. The faceless figure in the back seat leaned forward, impossibly close, its presence radiating a freezing weight that pressed into her chest. The radio erupted again, static shrieking violently, hundreds of voices layered on top of each other, whispering her name and chanting, "Stay, stay, stay. Never leave." Jenna slammed her foot on the accelerator, desperate to escape, but the car wouldn't respond. The tires spun helplessly on asphalt that seemed to ripple like water. The figures in the fog had multiplied. Dozens, then hundreds, stretching, twisting, faceless eyes fixed on her. Some walked alongside the car, others appeared in the trees, bending their bodies in impossible ways. Jenna's breath fogged in the air as icy fingers of frost crept along her arms. Her headlights revealed a faint glow ahead. Relief surged, but as she approached, she realized it wasn't a town. The buildings leaned at impossible angles, doors swinging open into nothingness, and every window contained faceless figures, all staring. At the center of the clearing, the dark shape pulsed, black smoke writhing like a heartbeat. The figure in the back seat extended a long, thin arm toward her. The mist inside the car surged, wrapping around her legs, chest, arms. She screamed, struggling, but the force pressed her down, holding her still. Her reflection appeared in every surface, dozens of her own faces screaming silently, mouths moving, eyes hollow voids. The radio whispered directly into her mind, "The road owns you. Join us forever." Suddenly, the car lurched forward on its own, tires squealing, moving toward the black shape. The fog swirled violently, devouring the road behind her. She realized with horror that Willow Creek Road wasn't a road, it was a trap. A liminal space feeding on travelers, bending reality to keep them forever. Then, in a final burst, the fog swallowed the car completely. All was silent. No car, no tracks, no light, only the faintest crackle of static drifting in the cold night air. Willow Creek Road lay empty, deceptively calm under the pale moonlight. Somewhere, deep in the mist, Jenna's voice joined the static, faint and distorted. "Turn back, never." And the road waited, patient, hungry, ready for the next traveler to vanish into the fog. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Terrormouth.